pleasure to be here. I hope you all had a great lunch. I'm here to talk and ask you to come on a dream with me to envision a new educational environment. Let's see if this will work. Well, okay, there we go. Three things I'd like to talk about. Why do we need to rethink our educational environment? And then I want you to imagine with me what we might end up with. And finally, in case you get a little discouraged, I've got some wonderful examples that I'm going to share with you today. Okay, apparently you need, okay. So we like to say that there are many professions, engineers, doctors. If we transpose somebody from 100 years ago into their environment today, they would not know what to do. That is not true of educators, right? You saw similar pictures this morning. I think it's interesting that we have the same ideas. But think about what our students learn. This is the cover of Parade magazine from a couple of weeks ago. Young girl has a new hand that was developed and actually manufactured on a 3D printer. This is what our learners are seeing all day long in their real worlds. So what about this disconnect that we've got? This is a problem. We know learning theory tells us that non-linguistic activities, music, graphic organizers, movement, and images all improve content knowledge. That's a good thing. We also know that true cooperative work that whereas deep and meaningful, excuse me, develops learning gains. Well, knowing that, what are we going to do? We've done some surveys, and students will tell you what they need. And I would question that we all need the same thing. We need our voices heard. We need some choices, not just what we learn and how we learn, but also how we represent what we've learned and what we know. We need time for reflection. We need opportunities for innovation, and we need critical thinking. Nobody is handed their high school diploma, walks out the door, and is an excellent critical thinker unless they've practiced it, unless they've learned how to do it. And we also need kids who can problem solve, but they need to also problem pose. There's one thing to remember, and it's really important. 65% of today's primary school students are going to be doing careers that we can't even imagine. We can't prepare them for it. What we have to prepare them for is for the world that's going to be changing constantly. So how do we create the relevancy? We need to understand who our teachers are as well as who our learners are. And they are not the same as my generation. Some of you are probably young enough to count in there, but some of you may be remembering what life was like as we learned this morning. We also need to do what's needed to make education relevant for all. And to do that, we need to think about enabling people, engaging them, and empowering them. So how are we going to get started? We have in Pittsburgh an amazing array of programs. Many of them are truly innovative. Many of them, unfortunately, are outside of our classrooms. So we want to think about what do we know and where are we going to go? How are we going to create this environment? The first thing to think about is, what do we want people to know? What is it that someone should leave school being able to do? Do they need to know the 50 capitals? Obviously, we now know they don't need to know about stainless steel. So, and I learned a lot about that. But instead, they need to be authentically making things, seeking, collaborating. In addition to that, we need to help them see how things are interconnected. It's very rare. Everyone we've heard tonight, this morning, talks about how things are interconnected. We need to help people see that in their learning. And we need to sponsor and focus people on creativity. Without creativity, we're not going to get anywhere. Finally, we need to really think about personalized learning. It's the new thing. We now have the possibility of doing it. And again, we want every student to be able to identify what he needs or she needs and when and how. And very importantly, in this country in particular, is we do a lot of assessing of learning at the end of the unit, at the end of the semester, at the end of the year. That's not very helpful. Yes, it satisfies our politicians, but it's not very helpful. We need to be assessing for learning. How did I do today? What am I confused about? What do I need? I get to be, as a university professor, I get to ask questions all day long. I get to read. I get to think about what I want to know. I'm willing to bet that everyone in this room has the same kind of position. You get to think about things. We need to make sure that curriculum is learner-driven. And this is not grade specific. Okay, you're in Mrs. Jones's third grade room. If it's March, you're learning dinosaurs, period, end of discussion. We need to move away from that. We also need to perhaps revisit Seymour Papert and his constructionism idea that we learn by making things, by really doing authentic things. And finally, we need complexity. It's really very difficult, and I think we heard about the homework this morning, to think about, I know the answer to this little simple problem. You try and guess it, and if you get it right, I'll give you a sticker. Instead, we need people to think about the complex problems that are facing our world today. Energy, water, health, all kinds of things. So now we know what we want people to be able to do and learn. How do we find a way? Project-based learning is really what I'm describing to you. It's a system in which students work on projects that are long, a month, 2 months. They work with complexity. They have lots of people on their teams, and those kids are not all the same age or of the same special areas of emphasis. And in addition, they involve the students in active creation. Those project-based learning are things that we're starting to see. Okay, next, once we know what we want to do, we develop the physical space. Now, how do we create a space that truly allows for things? We're starting to see some beginnings in some schools, maker spaces in a school. We're seeing media centers pushing out their walls. But we also need to think about ways to make these adaptable, to group, ungroup, regroup, different sets of people, private places where somebody can think deeply on his or her own. We need to have movable walls. What we really need is technology to be totally ubiquitous. Now, I'm willing to bet anyone here a glass of wine that when you need a particular device, you know how to do it, and you pick it up and use it. You don't go to the device center for a half an hour on Tuesday. And that's the way technology needs to be. It's not a toy, it's a tool. And we pick up the right tool to use when we need it to solve our problems. We also need people to be able to leave the building, get out. If we can't do it physically, which I'm here to say we could, we can also do it virtually. And so the technology and everything has to be set up in these new spaces to allow for that. So now we look forward to a variety of configurations of what a school, what an educational environment might actually look like. And they're not the same as they were in those first two pictures that we showed you. These are things that are truly exciting. How do we do it? Where do we go? How do we get there? Let me give you 3 examples that I've had the opportunity to visit because of some research that I've been doing. Again, Pittsburgh is a marvelous sort of place where we can see all kinds of things happening. Now we've got to see if we can't get it beyond the Pittsburgh area. So the first one I want to talk about is the New Tech Network. If you're not familiar with it, I've got the website up there, and because of time, I can't show you too much. But this is a place that started in Napa Valley in 1996, completely wired, and they have a philosophy of teaching that is 100% project-based learning. Every classroom is set up as a double classroom, 60 students and 2 content areas. In those areas, they do an amazing set of long-term projects. So think English and history, logical. Those obviously go together. Now think biology and PE and fitness. They call it biofitness. The students learn how their body works while they're learning about other aspects of the physical environment. So these are the kinds of things that allow students to take responsibility for their own learning. These students, we got to visit them for a week, amazing. And students sit on all the governance bodies of the school. It's a small school, about 400 kids. Now this network has expanded from one school in Napa to about 140 schools, most in the US, but now in several countries. And they have to reconfigure their space, their curriculum, in order to get to the point where every student is learning on his or her own with others and being responsible for their own learning. Okay. Let me get to, my second one is the studio schools. Now, this started not very long ago in the UK. I don't know if any of you have had an opportunity. I've not visited this, but it's pretty amazing. They decided that people leave school and go to work, and those are considered two parts of your life that are not well connected. So they created these studio schools, and they are starting to spread around the UK and even a few out of the UK. These are schools where students are actively engaged in real work. While they're learning, they are apprenticing in businesses, not slave labor. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about students participating in projects with authentic workers, whatever it is that they're studying and learning about. They take their role, they give presentations, they offer their opinions, and they are actively engaged in what they're doing. They decide what they don't know and what they have to learn, and maybe that is the 50 capitals. I doubt it, but and then they're part and parcel of what's happening for part of every day. Again, a small school, about 400 students at a time. The last school I want to talk about is one that I have the honor of being on the advisory board. It's the Harbor School in Hong Kong. I actually haven't been there either, but I'm hopeful. This is a school that was started by two exceptional educators who I've known for a long time. And their school is dedicated to STEAM in every way, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, but they put the A in all the time, so it's also STEAM. The students do everything that is completely authentic. They learn, they investigate while they're busy learning other things. So students are responsible for younger students and older students. They share together, they learn, they have projects that they're working on, and it doesn't matter what grade you are, it matters what you're interested in or what you've identified you don't know. They take them, obviously, if they're in Hong Kong, they can take them on some pretty amazing adventures. And my favorite, and there is a video that I hope you will go and visit, but they decided to take on a sailboat, and that's because one of the owners is a sailor, to Malaysia. And they flew to Malaysia and then stayed on a sailboat for several days. But before they went, for about 6 weeks, the students were in groups, and they were studying marine life and astronomy and the cultural aspects of the people they were going to be meeting. And they kept diaries. And when they came back, they made a video of their experience. Now, not everybody gets to do that, but everybody could approximate that in some way or another. Personally, I think it'd be great if everybody did get to do that. This is the part of the boat that they practice on. Well, so how do we get there? This is where we are down to it's a problem. We can see it, we know there are some pockets, but how do we get every learner to know and be able to do this kind of educational experience? Well, we know that education is a system. Before I joined West Virginia University, I had the opportunity to spend about a year visiting exemplary schools in the US and in other places. And one of the things that we've learned is that you can't tinker with one piece and hope that it will change the whole system. It is a system, and we must look at it systemically. My research found that exemplary leaders were essential to the project. These were leaders who changed the nature of the learning outcomes, and they did it in unique ways. Technology was one piece, but not the only piece. These were all highly diverse schools with high free and reduced lunch numbers and so forth. So we didn't go to visit the schools where everything is easy. But these school leaders actually did everything simultaneously. Now, I have trouble walking and chewing gum, so doing 8 or 10 things at one time seems pretty hard. But I think what we saw was they were able to manage it, and they did it in lots of ways. One of the things they did, yes, these schools all had to take the state and the local and the national and the international tests, but they added other kinds of assessments to their metrics. So they were also looking at school persistence, attendance, behavior, some of the other non-grade point average types of assessments. The most important thing we found that they did was they valued educators. They valued the teachers, the skill, the knowledge, and they treated those teachers as true professionals. They gave them leadership opportunities, they listened to them, they collaboratively made decisions on how they were going to move forward, and that made a huge difference. Now, I'm a teacher educator and have been for over 20 years. We have to take that same model and move it into our teacher preparation programs. Those future teachers need to be apprentices, just like the medical doctors do. We need to get them into the schools. I'm happy to say that at my university, my college, students spend 3 out of the 5-year program, 3 of their years in schools. They spend 1,000 hours in the schools, and that makes a difference. Also, these schools celebrated risk-taking. It's very rare that we want someone to stand up and say, "Hi, my name is Lynn. I just made the biggest mistake, but here's what I learned." And we need to do more of that. And I could do that often. And Finland is often held up, right? Oh, the Finland students, it's so fantastic educational system. 50 years ago, it was one of the worst educational systems that there was. And what they did was they did a couple of things. One, they put all their teacher preparation in research universities. 2, they raised the eligibility so that only 10% of the applicants get to be teachers, and it's get to be a teacher. Then, once you've been accepted, you get 3 years post-baccalaureate of fully paid, and you get paid a stipend, master's level preparation to become a teacher. That in itself would change a lot if we could do that here. It's not a 6-week program that you take in the summer and bong, you're a teacher. And then, once you are a teacher, you're treated as a professional. You run your classroom, you are treated as a professional. And you're paid equal to doctors and lawyers, just saying. So, beyond dreaming, here's what I think. We need to start early. We need to have every universal early childhood, because someone who shows up at age 5 and is already 2 years behind in vocabulary, they're going to have a struggle. Second, we need to think large. We need to not stick to small projects. We need to think more systemically. All of our children need this. And finally, we need to engage our communities, which is why I'm standing here with you. And I'm just about to run out of time. Please, I hope you will join me on this, and thank you for your attention.